Oh, hey, gang. A little preface here before we get into the inaugural episode of Books vs. Blockbusters podcast. We were still calling the podcast something different when we recorded this episode before we did our little bit of a rebrand on everything. So all of the things that we plug for the most part are going to be wrong. We're going to be referencing the podcast as the Book Was Better podcast. Just ignore it. The next one that we release will go forth with the Books vs. Blockbusters name. And you can find us on all of the social medias. Just look for Books vs. Blockbusters. Enjoy the episode. This week on the show, the inaugural episode of the Book Was Better podcast. And we're talking about Neil Gaiman's Stardust. My name is Bren.
And my name's Nikki.
And welcome to our library. Got some mystical audio playing now. Welcome to the show. As always, we are very excited to kick off our first episode of the Book Was Better podcast with a book that you were very, very excited to talk about.
Yes, I was. This is a childhood favorite of mine.
And it's we kind of how this show is going to work. Is you are the notorious bookworm of our household.
Yes.
You are a surprisingly fast reader.
Correct.
That is always something that I have admired so much about you.
Well, thank you.
And I read like a second grader, so I will be covering kind of the movie side of it. So this is going to be a show where we compare and contrast a movie adaptation of a novel or some piece of narrative words on paper. We're going to get a little bit loose with it. So today we are talking about the 1999 novel Stardust by the legend himself, Neil Gaiman, and the 2007 film Stardust, directed by Matthew Vaughn, who you might know from some other films. Mm-hmm. I am so incredibly surprised that he is the individual that directed this movie. This movie is surprisingly warm.
Yes, in comparison to his other films.
and optimistic.
Yeah. It's a fairy tale.
It is a fairy tale, just like Kick-Ass and The Kingsman and X-Men First Class. Fairy tales in their own right.
Well, did you know that he was actually supposed to do X-Men Last Stand, but he pulled out, and instead of doing Last Stand, he did this movie? They started filming in 2006.
Probably better movie if he directed X-Men The Last Stand. Okay, so we're kind of getting rolling here a little bit. The way that we're going to kind of get this set up is it's going to be broken into acts, like how movies are broken into acts as well. So we kind of open our movie with a little bit of a preamble about our main character's father, which is how the book starts as well.
So in the book, the first 33 pages of the book, however, is Dunstan's story.
It's about 3.5 minutes.
It's about
in the movie.
So I guess there's a good bit missing from that preamble in the movie.
Okay.
Because there's like a full story about his father crossing the wall. The wall is the village that they live in, mm-hmm. which is bordered up against Ferry, which is what is on the other side of the wall. In the film, we see it called Stormhold, which is the name of the kingdom, not the name of the place. Not the actual
town itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's not even a town. Ferry is think of Ferry as the country, Stormhold as a kingdom in the country. Does that make sense?
Okay. Like and it's supposed to act as like a fairy tale
Correct.
World.
It's a fairy tale world. It's a mystical land that borders England, essentially.
Okay. As many mystical lands do border England.
Absolutely. I mean, Middle Earth.
I think that is probably my biggest issue with the movie is you kind of don't get an understanding for how the world works.
Correct.
Because like this preamble part where his name is Dunstan Thorne, it kind of it resembles him like he's at school and he's going into this college town to like bang broads and get drunk.
Yeah. Which is
like,
not the case.
It's like a radical party town, and I was like, this is pretty sweet, man. There's little elephants in cages and stuff, mm-hmm. and there's SpongeBob SquarePants eyeballs in a jar.
No. No, not how it works.
So there, he comes up upon this wall, which will be a larger plot device as the movie progresses. He meets a man with some of the most ridiculous facial hair. There is some wild beards and mustaches in this movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of facial hair and hair in general in the novel, which is fun. Now that man in the film that we meet at the beginning with Dunstan does not really exist.
He's not in the book.
He's not in the book. Not in a specified, this is this character. So the wall is guarded.
Okay.
Every day in 3 shifts, morning, evening, night, by 2 men from the village of Wall. But once every 9 years, the wall is unguarded on May Day when the market comes and the people from the village can cross the wall and go to the market in Ferry. So that town that you see, it doesn't exist. It's just a field on the other side.
Okay.
In the book. But every 9 years, it becomes a market.
Wow. Okay. And this just seems like it's like he's sneaking out. It's like when you got college kids and they're in their dorms and stuff, and their dorm is like
a mile from the nearest like pub town.
Yeah. Well, and it's like when they legalize marijuana in like the county, but not in like the state. You know? So the college is like a state institution, so you gotta like walk across the street to go into like the different county to go smoke weed in the graveyard. Yeah.
So something similar.
And it really is, because we have some other, we'll get to them kind of later in the movie, where we have, you know, some of these fairy characters trying to cross over into Wall, and it's not necessarily explained too well as to like why they can't come over and what the entire process is. It seems like there's a lot of magic being hidden by like a 4-foot stone wall, and that's it.
Yeah, so the thing about that is the people from Fairy can cross the wall. It's just Yvain that can't cross the wall.
Okay.
Because she's not from Fairy.
Okay.
She is what she is, and we'll get to her in a little bit.
Yeah.
But she can't cross the wall because she's something entirely different in our world.
Okay.
So, but a little bit more of the Dunstan thing is that, so he lives in the village of Wall. He crosses Wall for Mayday. Before he crosses the wall, that's a whole day. He's spending the day with a woman. Oh God, what is her
Una?
name?
Are we talking about Una?
No, we'll get to Una.
Okay.
What is her name? I think it's Emily.
Okay.
Is that her name? Daisy. Apologies. Her name is Daisy. He's spending the day with a girl named Daisy, who he is supposed to be marrying.
Okay.
Now he doesn't know that he's supposed to marry her yet. But it's sort of being like thrown around that, you know, I'm courting this girl. The you know, in anticipation is that I'm supposed to marry her. But I'm not really sure I want to do that yet. Dunstan is only 18 during this.
Yep. And they do a good job in the movie of like mirroring Tristan's story to Dunstan's.
Tristan's ending is the ending that Dunstan should have gotten, but Una was playing her cards right. So
is she's like a nefarious character in the novel?
Yes.
Okay.
So and not in a bad way. However, it's what she needs to do to get back home.
I gotcha.
So he goes to the market. He meets her. He buys the snowdrop from her.
He makes out with her a little bit.
No. He buys the snowdrop from her for a kiss on the cheek, and it's only a kiss on the cheek. He goes back to the village, gives the snowdrop to this girl as a proposal gift, and then goes back to the market because Una had asked him to come back at nightfall. Well, when he comes back at nightfall, they do what they do when we see in the movie.
Yep, they
out in the field, and this novel opens by saying it is an adult fairy tale. And I'll tell you what, having seen the movie before I read the book, I did not anticipate smut when I read the book. I was reading the book. First 15 pages.
And this is a capital K kids movie. Like the movie that we just watched. I think
it is a young adult movie, but it's not like a kid movie.
I think you could show
there are people getting murked.
Yeah, but it's played for laughs though.
No, you think Primus's death was played for laughs?
100%. No. Because that's why you have all the Monty Python ghosts like sitting up and cracking jokes, and it's like, isn't it funny?
Well, no. Okay. So their
We'll get to
characters
it.
are
We'll
different.
get to it. We'll get to it.
No.
So yeah, they in the film we see Dunstan go in. He makes out with Una for a little bit.
At this point, we don't know her name.
Oh, just the slave girl,
She's
which our credits
girl,
kept saying.
Yeah, Slattener is what she was being called by Ditchwater Sal. So.
Yeah. So they go in, and I'll tell you what, man. If the wagon is a rockin', don't come a knockin'.
Yeah.
But you know who does come a knockin' is our Ebenezer Scrooge looking wall guard with a special baby delivery for Mr. Dunstan. And we get to watch, quote unquote, how Tristan Thorne becomes a man.
And that is really, really fun because that is the chapter title of the second chapter.
Oh, very cool.
Hang on, let me make sure it's the exact thing. Yep, in which Tristan Thorne grows into manhood and makes a rash promise. Is the title of the second
Very, very
thing.
Cool.
I'm not done with
that
beginning.
Goodness, okay.
I'm not done. So, yes, wagons are rocking, baby delivery 9 months later. Dunstan comes back across the wall and marries Daisy. Daisy, yeah, 2 weeks later. Okay, marries her at the beginning of, I highlighted all of this so I would make sure that I had it right when I was explaining it to you. So, he, let's see, where was it? Dunstan Thorne was married in June to Daisy Hempstock. Dunstan also gave her the snowdrop, but he was like, you're not allowed to wear that when we get married, because he kept thinking of Una. So it's like this whole thing. And then he marries her in June, and at the end of February, Tristan is delivered. Now, I'm going to say Tristan while I'm talking about him, because his name in the book is harder to pronounce. It's Tristran. There's a T-R-A-N.
I'm very glad they changed that.
Me as well, but it's supposed to be a nod to him being from Fairy. The names are different there. Of course, we see a bunch of weird names. But something else to note from this preamble or whatever is that there is this character entitled the Little Hairy Man. Okay. He is a little dog-looking man. He walks on 2 legs. Think of him the size of like a goblin.
Okay.
He carries a giant pack. He's a merchant. He came over the wall because it was raining. He didn't know where he was going. He hid out in Dunstan's barn.
Okay.
And Dunstan was in there with him, and he let him stay. Dunstan let him stay the night, and kept him sheltered or whatnot, and gave him food. And then we don't hear of the Little Hairy Man again until 2 chapters later.
And he's not in the movie.
He's not in the movie at all, which is a really interesting thing, because Neil Gaiman himself said that when they started talking about making the movie, and Matthew Vaughn was like, bro, we have an hour that we gotta cut from this book because there's so much stuff that's not necessary to the movie.
And I think there's probably more they could have cut.
And the things that they could have cut is what they added. That's what I have to say. But Dunstan marries Daisy, and Daisy is already pregnant by the time that Tristan is delivered across the wall.
Okay.
So, Tristan has a little sister, 6 months his junior, by the name of Louisa.
Okay.
Who is how he knows Victoria Foster. She is friends with Victoria, who is also 6 months his junior.
Okay.
Who we will meet momentarily.
So we meet Tristan, who is played by Daredevil himself, Charlie Cox.
Yes.
Who I think is pretty great in this movie.
I think he played this character very, very well.
I think, and you'll have to maybe comment on it, I have some issues kind of going into the second act, with him feeling like not the same character from the first act.
Yeah.
Because he's very sweet and very earnest, and then like as soon as he meets Yvain, he's kind of an asshole.
Kind of an asshole.
But he comes in. He is besmitten with this Victoria Foster, who is just an obnoxious. Don't just
pick me girl.
Exactly, a pick me girl. Tristan, I have written as a shot boy loser, which I think is funny.
Shot boy is what she calls him throughout the beginning of the novel. Yes.
And he brings her some flowers, and they're chit chatting, and in comes I'll tell you what, Charlie Cox, handsome guy, but I'm picking Henry Cavill every single time. And you want to talk about wild facial hair. This mustache he's got in this movie is ridiculous.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting character for him to be playing because he was not a very big actor at the time of this movie yet.
Yeah, it's like Hemsworth and Knock at the Cabin. It's like, if only you knew.
Yeah.
This movie is kind of a collection of people that would go on to do bigger things.
Cabin in the Woods.
Not Knock at the Cabin. Cabin in the Woods.
I was
Excuse
like, wait a
me.
second, what?
Although a Dave Bautista Superman.
No. No, yeah.
Oh, and we'll get to you, Mr. Weasley.
Yeah, yeah. No, but Humphrey, Henry Cavill's character, does not exist. Humphrey does not exist in this book. The suitor that is interested in Victoria Foster, however, she does not return his interest that we know of yet, is a man by the name of Robert Munday, who owns a shop in Wall where Tristan works. Mm-hmm. So he is the shop boy for Mr. Munday. Now, Mr. Munday is, I say Monday, it's Monday, sorry. He is 45?
So significantly
already
older.
A widow. Already a widower. And Victoria is 16 and a half.
Okay.
17.
So she's very clear. Is she like betrothed by her family to this gentleman?
No, she's not. She's not betrothed at all. It's more of a Louisa is poking at her because Mr. Monday's been looking at her.
Oh, okay.
And the girls are... It's a scene where all the girls... Tristan's not even there. They're sitting under a tree and they're talking about it, about who she was to marry because she's getting to the age where she needs to marry. Mm-hmm. This is all set in Victorian England, by the way. Just for our listeners who haven't seen or heard of it. So 17 was not a very young age, for her to be getting married at.
Practically middle age at this point.
Yeah, she should have already been married. But no, the girls are poking fun at her for it, and he's 45. One of her friends is Victoria's like, I don't want to marry him because he's a used toy. That's pretty much what she was trying to say. And her friends were like, well, that's kind of the fun part, he won't be demanding of you. He won't be all this stuff. And Victoria's like, pish posh, ignore you. So, and then Tristan comes. Their little discussion is a little different in the book because Humphrey doesn't exist. So she comes to the shop with a list like we see in the film. She comes in
and gets this guy fired. Which doesn't
happen in the book.
So I was getting so mad about this lady costing this dude his job.
Yeah.
So he gets fired. He uses a bunch of somehow money that he has saved up because they do portray these characters like they are struggling to get by a little bit.
Which is not the case in the book. Tristan comes from a pretty well-to-do family in the grand scheme of things.
This guy's sleeping on a pile of leaves in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go and he goes out and he buys her some champagne. So these kids are getting drunk.
Yeah.
And they're partying and doing all this kind of stuff. And she's like kind of sort of ish flirting with him a little bit.
She's trying to get what she wants.
She's working an angle. Of
course. Which I think everyone is in this movie.
And then we cut to the what is essentially The Lion in Winter, the Patrick Stewart movie, where we have this kind of feudal drama that's happening about this king who's dying and his sons.
Yeah.
I wrote these names down because they're all so funny. We have Secundus, who I wrote down as Secundus.
Essentially Secundus.
Segundus. We should be calling him Fallout Boy here in a couple minutes.
Oh, no.
We have Primus, sure. We have Septimus, who will go on to be the most interesting of them all.
Yeah.
And the one you can really tell this guy does not care about, which is Tertius. Tertia. I read it as Tertia. He's a tertiary character. Thank you, Neil Gaiman. Appreciate it. And it's supposed to be like a kind of funny, silly, feudal, but it is, because it's Matthew Vaughn and because it's got to be snappy, quick, funny dialogue, it is just kind of Mark Strong and these other actors doing a Monty Python.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark Strong, by the way.
Thank you, Mark Strong. He's pretty good in this movie.
I think Mark Strong in this movie had a lot to do with my taste in men when it comes to fictional characters, because in the movie, he does it for me.
I'm glad.
In the book, Primus is the one that does it for me.
I'm glad I could be the snively, wormy man of your dreams.
No, and that's not what you are.
are.
No, but I'm just saying that Mark Strong, for the longest time, I don't know if anyone else has this problem, I confused Mark Strong and Stanley Tucci for like the first 12 years of my life.
Well, they're both proudly bald men.
Yeah, I know. They have very similar features.
Oh, and he's rocking a funny wig in this movie.
Yes, he is.
This wig is interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But before we get there, because we don't get to that part in the novel yet.
Oh my goodness.
So...
And this movie is, I think, what we were talking about a little bit before we went on air is, I think an issue we're going to run into a lot with some of these movies is, like, it's the pacing of a novel and the pacing of a movie are so different.
They have to be.
You have to, yeah, they have to be. You have so much more time. Again, this movie is 2 hours long.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think if we trimmed some things and made it a little tighter, I think if we got a tight hour 45, I think it's a better movie.
Yeah.
And it cuts out some of the padding, of which I think there is a lot. But a book, when what you said, it's a 10-12 hour read time on Stardust.
It's about a 10-hour read time if you sit down and read it all the way through. But I read it from 3 o'clock yesterday to, however long this morning or this afternoon. I read it in a day and a half, pretty much.
And when you're having that much time with these characters and with this story, you're allowed to kind of spread those things out and
Correct.
check back in on characters and check back out and go on little side missions and side quests and all that kind of stuff.
Which, oh boy, there are a lot of in this novel.
It works in the book, but in the movie it feels like the story is spread really, really thin, and it's kind of hard to pay attention to.
Yeah, for a little bit. I do think that they were trying to tie in the characters of the princes to the rest of the novel, or to the rest of the film, because they all are, the ones that are alive at least, are all throughout the book.
Okay.
In
the movie they die pretty quick. We're left with Mark Strong by himself pretty quickly.
Yeah. So we have Primus up until, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through the book,
mm-hmm.
and then Septimus dies at the very end. So it's like he does in the movie. But I will say the last 45 half hour of the movie is completely different from the book.
Okay.
It diverges entirely. Nothing, barely anything from that last 30 minutes of the movie is in the book.
Okay.
So it's completely
Which is
different.
interesting, because I think the end of the book is probably the end of the movie is probably the most exciting part.
Yeah, which we don't get that, like, it's watching the movie first and then reading the book, the ending is anticlimactic. But if you do it the opposite and you're watching the movie, you're going to be like, "Holy shit."
Yeah, okay.
What is going on?
So we have these these princes, they're murdering each other slowly. We have their ghost siblings kind of hanging out in the background, which I think are funny. They're kind of Harry Potter characters.
I thoroughly enjoy the deceased brothers because they're also throughout the novel. And just like in the film, no one else can see them.
Yeah.
No one else can hear them, but they are the internal dialogue that we lack from the alive brothers. That's
okay,
pretty much
interesting.
what it is.
And that's kind of what they're used as in the film.
Yeah. And Septimus's demise is a little different because of Primus's demise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll get there, but it's much different in that. But yeah, so right here we have, like you said, we meet the brothers of Stormhold. And the princes of Stormhold.
And King Stormhold, or whatever his name is.
I think he's the 81st, in the book, he's the 81st King of Stormhold, who, where was it? He defeated the northern goblins at the Battle of something.
We have goblins in the book?
So I think you'd really like this book.
There's goblins?
There are goblins in this book.
Oh, man!
This book
Matthew Vaughn
is very D&D.
Why did I get no goblins in my movie?
Which is a great time. Because Matthew Vaughn had to cut this book down here, yeah, the 81st Lord of Stormhold lay dying in his chamber. And in the book, only 3 of the sons are alive. Yeah. That 4th one that comes in Secundus, he's already dead.
Is a joke to get him to fall out a window.
Yeah, Septimus has already pushed him out the window before any of this happened.
So he's on his deathbed. We have the characters kind of jawing at each other. They push Segundus out this window, which he has a funny splatter face for the rest of the movie. You can see like all the ghosts are depictions of themselves like immediately following their death, which is funny.
Yeah,
which is when we
frozen.
When we get to Primus later, he's like naked for the rest of the movie because he dies in the bath.
He dies in the bath. Yes. Hang on, sorry, I found the quote. He was for a heartbeat the Lord of Stormhold who had defeated the northern goblins at the Battle of Craigsland Head, who had fathered 8 children, 7 of them boys, one on 3 different wives, who had killed each of his 4 brothers in combat. So the Lord of Stormhold did what his sons are now doing.
Yeah.
Killing his brothers so he could become Lord of Stormhold.
Man, I'm so upset that we didn't get any goblins in this movie.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, and I even made a note when I was taking my notes, there's a lot of world building in this book, and that was something you complained about while watching the movie, is that there's no world building at all. There is so much world building in the novel that it's almost sad that it's not in the movie, because there's so much of this. And little fun note, this is a lot of stuff that's gonna have to deal with when you and I do our D&D campaign. But
great.
Yeah, so I will be mentioning a lot of stuff from this novel in that, but I lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Anyway, continue. Pick up.
So the king is dying. He has this special necklace that only the true blood of whatever the hell can fix this ruby. He casts it off into space, which is when we get our first look at Michelle Pfeiffer as Lamia
in the movie. However, in the book, she's never given a name.
Okay.
She's called the Witch Queen, and she is one of the 3 Lilum.
Okay.
So she has her 2 sisters that we meet as well. All of this is happening congruently.
Yeah.
So the dinner date with Tristan and Victoria is happening at the same time that we see the Lord of Stormhold throw the ruby in the movie, but it's a topaz in the book.
Okay.
And it's called the Power of Stormhold. And then the Lilum, who Lamia and whatever her sisters' names are, I couldn't even care. Those 3 are witnessing the star falling. Now, she didn't see that in the book. She cut a what was it called? It was an animal. I think it's a stout. I don't know. It's the middle ground between a weasel and a ferret.
Okay.
They cut it open and they learn that a star has fallen, and then that's when they do
they dissect the animals. She is, I tell you, she's the best part of this movie. She brings so much energy to this movie. When she's not looking like an old hag, she is looking damn good in this movie.
She is the only character, excuse me, in the entire movie that does not look anything like she is in the book.
Okay.
Yeah, she has a complete... think of Michelle Pfeiffer. You see her. She's blonde. She's, all this stuff. She has...
Well, my first depiction is, it's Catwoman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, she has, in the novel, she's that lady on the cover. She has black hair and, red dress and all this stuff. But other than her appearance, she fits this character to a T. And I think she couldn't have been cast better. And she was picked directly by Matthew Vaughn.
And I'll tell you what, Matthew Vaughn, there's your movie.
Yeah.
There's your movie. Because, it's okay. I'm really cool with front-loading this about the first act and kind of getting all these characters. Because guess what? Act 2, not a whole lot happens. So, there are, like, large swaths of the movie where I'm just looking, like, where is Michelle Pfeiffer? She should be in this scene. She's not. Everyone's just kind of hanging out. There's new characters that I don't care about. We'll get to you, Ricky Gervais. And I want more of her. I think she should be in twice as many scenes as she is, because she is really twirling her mustache and really being the villain of this movie, where at times it feels like there isn't one.
Yeah, so I mean that's a big thing in the book, is there's not technically a villain. I mean, she is the person who's hunting the star, but she's not the like villain of there's not one. Like the ending of this book is completely different. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna have to get to that, because it vastly differs from her character in the movie, which is really, really cool. Yeah, so all that's happening congruently. This necklace.
Yep. So we get the necklace, topaz in the book, ruby in the film.
Yeah.
It crashes down in what is essentially the wizard crashing down Rings of Power and creating this big crater. And we get Claire Danes as Yvain.
Yvain. Yeah.
Yvain. And who's also pretty great in this movie.
Yeah. Yvain is a fallen star. She was knocked out of the sky by that ruby. Which turns into a quartz, which is very interesting if you caught that.
Yeah.
It's not a ruby when it hits her. It only becomes a ruby when Tristan picks it up later.
So when the king sent out the ruby,
correct,
he did not know that she was going to come with it?
No, I don't believe he did, because he dies immediately after,
okay,
which is really funny.
So I thought his whole thing was, here's the star.
No. So the princes are literally just looking for the necklace. The necklace. That's why when Primus finds her later, he's like, "Bro, how'd you get that? Where'd you find that?"
Okay.
And she, "Dog, this shit hit me.
This shit hit me in the face.
This hit me in the face."
And they use Tristan learns about his mother around this point, after he promises Victoria that he's going to go get her the fallen star and bring it back to her for her hand in marriage. And she's like, "Yeah, dude, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
you're
great.
never gonna do it.
That's great.
It's never gonna happen. You're never gonna find the star. Go do your thing. Humphrey's gonna bring me a diamond from Ipswich."
Yeah, cut to Henry Cavill flexing in the mirror at home.
Yeah, at home with the top hat
twirling
on,
his mustache.
Yeah. No amount of pomade could keep that mustache intact.
So we get they kind of go through the Harry Potter-esque basket that Tristan was returned to Dunstan in.
That's a really interesting comparison. Yeah,
and
that's pretty fair.
There's a note from his mother, which I do like that it's just signed your mother.
Your mother. Yeah.
Where I guess.
I mean, Dunstan didn't even know her name.
Yeah.
So I mean, in the book, Dunstan had no idea who she was. Mm-hmm. We don't know who she is. I mean, in the beginning of the movie, she tells him the truth. She doesn't lie to him. She's like, "I'm a captured princess by a witch, and I'm her slave until she dies."
Okay.
And she's not really a slave until she dies. She's a slave in the book, at least. In the movie, she is, but in the book, she's a slave until 2 Mondays come together in a single week.
Okay.
When the star loses their daughter and 2 Mondays come, or when the moon loses her daughter and 2 Mondays come together in a week.
So Mr. Monday.
So Mr. Monday and Victoria at the end. But, spoiler.
So they use this Babylon candle.
Babylon candle.
Is what they keep calling it.
So, yeah, continue.
And Charlie Cox teleports out of that room. Mm-hmm. Dunstan leaves the movie to go open the Haunted Mansion. Mm-hmm. And we kind of get on our way with the story. Yeah.
So that's something that's also very different, is because Tristan is walking Victoria home, and they see the fall star, and he did the whole thing that he did there was he recited all these different things that he would do for her to marry her. And one of them was, kill the polar bears and bring you back its hide. That was one thing. Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, that's kind of gross. But you can go get me that fallen star." And he's like, "Sure, why the hell not?" And leaves that night. He goes to his dad, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go get a star." And his dad's like, "Hang on. Where are you going?" And his dad, Tristan has no idea where he's from. Mm-hmm. He has no idea why he's only 6 months older than his sister. He thinks that Daisy's his mother. And Dunstan just lets it go. He doesn't tell him anything.
What a piece of shit this guy is. And he walks him
to the wall, and he tells the 2 guards at the wall, "My son Tristan, you know where he comes from?" And they're like, "Well, it's only rumors. We don't really know." And then he's like, "Well, it's true, so he needs to go back now." And Tristan's like, the fuck is he talking about? And he sends Tristan over the wall with a pack and just fucking hike along. So Tristan starts walking, and after a little bit, he comes across, or he goes to sleep, and he's dreaming. And the dreams are very vivid and whatnot. It's not really relevant. But this little voice comes into his head, and the quote was distinctly a hairy voice. And it said, "Could you dream a little quieter? Your dreams are leaking into mine."
Okay.
And he wakes up, and he looks around, there's no one there, and he goes back to sleep. And when he wakes up, a little hairy man's with him.
Oh, okay.
So this is a completely different... The first two chapters, like, or the first, I guess, the chapter 2 and chapter 3 are him with the little hairy man walking along, doing different things, having different discussions, learning things about each other, and the little hairy man's the one who gives him the Babylon candle.
Okay.
And the title was "Can I Get There by Candlelight" of the thing, and it's based on a nursery rhyme, actually, an English nursery rhyme. 70 miles and 10, can I get there by candlelight? Yes, and back again. Yes, if your feet are nimble and light, you can get there by candlelight. And it's by a Babylon candle. So
okay.
He's not looking for his mother. He was like,
he's looking
I'm gonna look for my mom, and then he hits a vein.
Yeah.
He's looking for the star.
Okay.
And if he hadn't big thing, Victoria doesn't give him a timeline.
Okay.
So in the movie, Victoria's like, you have until my birthday, which is a week away.
Uh-huh.
In the book, she's like, whenever you can, because she didn't have any prospects. Yeah. So it would have taken him, he was already traveling for a week by the time he got the Babylon candle. And it would have taken him like another 6 months to get to Yvain if he hadn't used the candle. So he uses the candle, gets to her, and then it's another 6 months back.
Okay.
So he gets
there.
He leaves Wall. It's a week and a couple of days, and then he gets the Babylon candle. And the Babylon candle does not just transport him there. He's like walking, and with every step he takes, he crosses hundreds of miles.
Okay.
So he's going through this entire kingdom to get to her. He's crossing mountains and lore and stuff. One of the mountains is called Mount Belly because the folklore is a giant. But he gets to Yvain in this field who has broken leg, and then that's where it was. So he still doesn't, at that point, he still doesn't know. And we don't meet Yvain until like 120 pages into the book.
Crazy. And a lot of that timeline kind of really hinders the movie. Especially when in the second act that is kind of starting now, once all of our characters kind of get on their way and are now pointed all kind of in the same direction.
Yeah.
What feels like the heart and soul of the movie is Yvain and Tristan like falling in love and becoming like characters that understand and appreciate each other and are complete counters to the other like characters around them, but when you don't really get that time spent with just the two of them.
Not in the movie. No.
Because there's so much plot that we have to get to.
Yeah,
there's so many things that have to happen that like the movie just kind of meanders and you kind of lose where you're at.
Yeah.
Because he teleports, he hits her, he immediately ties her up, which is I guess what the young lads are doing nowadays to get these ladies.
Yeah.
He immediately ties this girl up without asking too many questions. Yeah. She's like, "Oh, you're the star. Interesting."
Yeah. Well, what's really important about what he ties her up with is that in the movie, that's the part of the chain that Dunstan cuts from Una.
Correct.
In the book, that chain is given to him by the little hairy man.
Okay.
So he's like, he just hands it to him, and he's not giving it to him for any specific reason, but he's like, "Here, hold this," and Tristan just keeps it.
Yeah.
Which he then uses on the star. And that's a whole different thing in the book as well, is, he ties her up and all this stuff, but they're tied together. Mm-hmm. So, they start walking, and of course she's limping and stuff, and
they're, this is kind of what they're doing in the movie at this point, is they're walking through the woods. She's like, it's noon, I need to go, I'm a star, I'm supposed to be up at night, I need to relax. So he like goes to a different town to get them food or something, and of course she runs away, and in comes like the Shockmaster, this unicorn, which we don't get a whole lot on. We never see it again after this little sprint of the film.
Yeah, the unicorn has a very different fate in the book. The unicorn plays a much bigger role because it's, again, another nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
We learn in the film that Captain Shakespeare, who we'll get to here momentarily, believes that all the tales from England are folklore.
Uh-huh.
It's the same thing. So all of the nursery rhymes, essentially English people tell their kids, are things that have actually happened or are happening in fairy.
Okay.
So the Babylon Candle rhyme, the unicorn and the lion is a nursery rhyme. And the lion fights the unicorn because he's trying to get his crown back. So Yvain and Tristan are walking through, and they come across this field where this lion and unicorn are going ham at each other.
Whoa!
Yeah, they're fighting.
I thought...
Oh, no, not that way.
Listen.
I'm so sorry. No. They're fighting.
Well, hey, you were talking about all the smut in this book.
I know. There's only one scene. It's only in the beginning. It's only in the first 33 pages.
Man, where are we putting that horn, man?
No. So that horn goes into a cup later, and it's really interesting. No, but they're fighting, and this lion's practically going to kill the unicorn.
Okay.
And Yvain is begging, and at this point, he still doesn't know her name. He's only calling her the Star. She's begging him, stop them, don't let that poor thing die. And so Dunstan sees the crown on the ground, and he goes over and gets it, and he essentially throws himself in front of this unicorn, and starts to recite the rhyme, and gives him the crown. And so Tristan, God, I keep getting them mixed up. Tristan unchains Yvain and leaves her with the unicorn while he goes to the village to get stuff for himself and comes back.
Okay.
So she hightails it out of there.
Yeah, she splits.
She's like, I'm gone. The unicorn doesn't save her, but she's like, I'm gone. So he comes back, and essentially the same thing. He sits on a tree and goes to sleep.
And then this is in the movie, we kind of get this intercut with some of the Michelle Pfeiffer setup of her being like, this is what's going on with my witch sisters. Mm-hmm. Hocus Pocus is happening off screen.
Yep.
And they're kind of setting up, hey, I'm going to be the one to go out and get this star to restore all of our youth and do all that kind of stuff.
She eats the last bit of the heart of the star that they had. In the movie, it's 400 years. In the book, it's 200 years ago.
Okay.
But Michelle Pfeiffer has been around since the dawn of time.
Uh-huh.
Since the dawn of fairy, the Ilium have been alive.
Well, hey, she's not that old.
So.
I mean, the actress, no. And then we're also getting intercut with this a lot more of the stuff, but, we get the scene where it's, Septimus and the rune guy.
Oh, the soothsayer.
The soothsayer, and that's a scene that's 5 minutes you can cut out of the movie.
Yes.
All of the second act meandering of these brothers trying to find this necklace.
Yeah.
Is just not interesting, and I'm like, dude, the movie's happening somewhere else.
Yeah, so the movie does spend a lot more time with the brothers than it does in the book, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to set up how all of these characters converge. Uh-huh. Because they all converge at one point at some point in the film. They all come into the same room. Now that soothsayer scene replaces a scene in the book. That's not in the book.
Okay.
That replaces a scene where Primus goes to a little port town, and he is trying to essentially distract his brother. So he goes in, he gets a spot on a ship, and he tells a bunch of the people in the town, he's like, if you hear of a new person, he's very crow-like, come tell us. And that's where I think they got the Severus Snape look from. For Septimus,
yeah,
because he's very crow-like and described like that a lot. Angular and very greasy, sort of. So he pretends to do all this stuff, and then he's up on a cliff while Septimus is on the ship sailing away. Okay. So that was essentially just a distraction tactic. And all of that is happening at the same time that Tristan's sitting down and taking his fucking nap. Yeah. While this star is running away with the unicorn.
He starts having some dreams, and there's, I guess, other stars talking to him, and telling him, hey, save our sister, blah, 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 whatever it may be. And it's about that time that we see Primus and his chariot kind of going through the woods.
Yeah, Primus.
Carrying all of the ghosts.
The Ghost Brothers.
Like the hitchhiker
carriage.
ghost to make another Haunted Mansion reference.
Yeah. Which does happen in the book. It happens very similar. However, it's the moon, and she's like, save my daughter.
Okay.
But it's also a tree. That oak tree he's leaning against begins to speak to him. Because she was previously a human. And that's like a lot of the characters you run into in this book. You know what she does to Tristan with the mouse? A lot of the characters in this book are objects.
Okay.
Like the tree was a person. And she's the one who's telling him the coach is coming. You need to go get on the coach. You need no matter what you do, go with that man.
So Yvain is riding her unicorn.
Yep.
And we see Michelle Pfeiffer, who's struggling with her GPS. And her sister's like, dude, just stay where you're at. We'll come find you. Don't worry about it. So she sets up this trap that just looks like an inn.
Yeah.
We get Mark Williams as a goat person.
Yeah.
Who is so funny and such great physical acting. I think there's good physical acting all around in this movie. Oh yeah,
that's something that we left out earlier is as we learn about Michelle Pfeiffer's character in that little bit, she comes across this redhead boy. His name is Bernard in the movie. However, his name is Brevis in the book. She meets him the same way, offers him a Florian for the goat, offers him a bunch of different stuff, and he's like, well, ma'am, I don't think that your thing will, your chariot can be pulled by this one billy goat. And she's like, yeah, you're right. Matching set's better, and fucking turns him into a goat.
Yeah.
And so then when the inn comes, she turns them both into humans. One that was a goat is now a human, and it's really weird because that's where you get the really cool physical acting from Mr.
Funny.
Williams.
So Primus and Tristan roll up on this place after Yvain rolls in. They put her unicorn away.
Yeah,
they give her a bath. Michelle Pfeiffer offering a massage, which hey, that probably would have got me too.
Yeah, me too.
And
this is where we see, sorry to interject, this is where we see, because it's important, we see Yvain start to shine.
Yeah.
Which is really cool, because she is a star. What do stars do best? They shine. And that's, as she begins to relax and feel more comfortable, the brighter she gets. And she's giving away what she is. And it's a really interesting scene.
Yeah.
That no one else seems to pick up on her shining.
Yeah. I think
other than the witch, which is odd in that scene.
It's an interesting device that they use in the movie to kind of show where the character is at.
Yeah.
I think if the script was a little less of the characters blatantly saying what they're feeling, I think it'd be a little bit more effective.
Yeah, she is a very abrasive character in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, her first word is, ow, fuck. Like, when we meet her in the book, because it's her crashing into the brook.
Yeah.
But, no, she's very, very mean to Tristan.
Yeah.
And, of course, I would be, too, in that situation. But, no, she's very naive in this scene. Because the only human she's interacted with is Tristan so far. So she sees this woman who's, of course, Michelle Pfeiffer. And she's offering her comfort and a bath and all this stuff. And she's like, this is pretty nice. This is okay. I'm not suspectant of anything, but...
And we get, she tries to poison Primus, and it does not work. So then the poison gets passed to Tristan.
Yeah.
And then we have all of that cool stuff in the book with the unicorn that you were just explaining. The unicorn basically tells Tristan, no, you're supposed to be our sober driver. You can't have that. He knocks the drink out of his hand. We watch it kind of like smoke and fizzle on the ground. And then basically says deuces and leaves the movie. Not before plowing through the front door of this tavern and destroying this goat puppet, which is so funny.
Yeah, so what's really, really great about that scene is that's a very PG-13 way that goat dies. So that scene functions a little differently. The unicorn does tell Tristan, yes, don't drink that, but he goes over and he sticks his frickin' horn in it. And it starts to smoke, and Tristan's like, oh no, poison, and runs in. Tristan doesn't know that Yvain's there yet.
Yeah.
He's like, Primus, don't drink that! She's gonna poison you! They tried to poison me! And the unicorn follows him.
Okay.
And comes barreling in, and knocks the barmaid, who is Brevis, or Bernard, whatever.
Yeah.
As in drag, kills her, kills her. She's dead. Who reverts back to a man. Mm-hmm. And then the billy goat, like we see in the movie, is like, I'm gonna ram it with my horns that don't exist, and runs at it head first. So the unicorn just sticks its head down, and he goes forehead straight into the unicorn's horn. And murks that way. I loved watching that puppet get blasted against the wall. Michelle Pfeiffer cuts Primus's throat. Yep. And we get to see him kind of naked hanging out with the rest of the gang. With his brothers, yeah. Blue blood, by the way? Not in the book. That's actually a note that I made. Blue blood, I think, is just a nod to the fact that he's royalty, but it specifically says that Red coated her red dress in that scene. So okay. Weird choice. It's a weird choice. I think it was just like a character choice to, be like, oh, this is a fairy tale, royals have blue blood, but that's not really the fact. And yeah, she kills Primus, but she then also goes over and kills the unicorn. Not in the novel. In the novel, okay. Yeah, sorry. Goes over and kills the unicorn, but it does get a really good shot at her, and it freaking impales her through the shoulder. Okay. So, which she slices its neck with those really, really cool knives she has of obsidian and bone. They do look very, very cool. Yeah, they're really, really sweet. That was something I was really excited that the movie did after reading the book, was that it mirrored exactly what she used. And I was like, that's pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. So they use the remainder of their Babylon candle. They teleport up into the sky. Mm-hmm. I guess they say it's like, well, you were thinking of your home, I was thinking of my home, so we met somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And this is where we meet, again, who enters the movie with the entire scene in his mouth. We have Robert De Niro as Captain Shakespeare of this like pirate group. And I stopped the movie and said this to you. This should have been Robin Williams, because this is just Robert De Niro doing a Robin Williams impression. So I did a little bit of research while you were watching the movie. Okay. This was Matthew Vaughn's choice. Okay. He specifically chose Robert De Niro, but De Niro was one of 3 that could have been chosen that he was tossing around. It was Robert De Niro, Stephen Fry, and Jack Nicholson. Ooh. And I was like, of those 3, I think De Niro was your best choice. De Niro's the best shot out of those 3. It's just so weird. And I was surprised it wasn't Williams. It's really weird to see a guy who's like, he's usually very cold and very sharp. He's very serious. In most movies. So to him to be very smiley and jokey, and I know they kind of like, haha, isn't it funny that he's a cross-dresser? Yeah. None of this is in the book. He first appears on page 183, and then he is gone by page 193. Okay. He's only here for not even that. And he's not in the movie for very long. We get him a little bit at the end. We get a little bit of stuff with him. What we get in the book is that he is Captain Johannes Alberic. Okay. Of the free ship Perdita. There are 6 people in his crew, one of them being a woman. And he is, talking with Tristan. They're with Tristan for about the same amount of time, a week. And then he mentions that he knows what Yvain is. Yeah. And Tristan immediately gets scared, which Yvain immediately gets scared in the movie when Captain Shakespeare says, I know what you are. Yeah. Because everyone seems to be fucking hunting her, so she's terrified. But in the novel, Captain Alberic tells Tristan, I know who you are because I know of this other person, and it's the little hairy man. Uh-huh. He had met with the little hairy man after seeing, before meeting Tristan, and the little hairy man told him, hey, if you happen upon this kid, he's trying to look for something, give him a little bit of help because he's a friend of mine. Captain Alberic and the little hairy man are essentially in a brotherhood together. And it is the castle something. I'll find it and add it in our show notes.
Man,
but it's very interesting. This little hairy man has a lot to do with this.
He should have been in this movie.
He should have been in the movie.
Just cast Danny DeVito. A 2007 Danny DeVito would have been fantastic. Yes, or like a Gilbert Gottfried would have been cool too.
Yeah, something like that.
So it kind of kickstarts this montage that we get, which I guess is supposed to be the point in which Tristan and Yvain fall in love.
Yeah.
Because it's like they start dancing with each other, and Captain Shakespeare teaches Tristan to sword fight, which we see Humphreys, Mr. Henry Cavill, beat him up and like beat him in a duel at the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So we get a little bit of dancing going on. They become friends. I guess this is where they fall in love. This is the point in the movie where I'm like, okay, where is Michelle Pfeiffer? Where is any of the plot happening?
Yeah.
And then they kind of take, I guess they catch lightning here.
Yeah, so the ship Perdita in the book is a lightning catching ship. They're essentially catching it to sell like they do to what's his name.
Yep. This is where we get Ricky Gervais in the movie doing some of his original stand-up comedy after Michelle Pfeiffer gets to him and makes him just start talking like a monkey.
Seagull, yeah.
Fuck
that character
that guy.
Doesn't exist.
He shouldn't. Yeah.
It was a pointless character that I think they were just trying to fill a thing with and make it seem, because we see Ditchwater Sal in that scene, where they all know who they are. I keep mentioning Ditchwater Sal. I don't know if we specified who she was.
Which is a great name.
She is Una's captor. She's the witch that Una works for in the very beginning at the caravan. And the snowdrop that Dunstan buys from Una
makes
is
her
very important.
Yeah, immune to magic and stuff, which we'll see kind of later in the movie.
Yeah.
And they just kind of drop him off. You see that Shakespeare whispers something into his ear. They're wandering a little bit. Now,
this is where they come into contact with goblins, by the way.
They get some goblins going on here?
Yeah, in the town of Simcock Underhill, Tristan and Yvain
These fucking names. Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, had an encounter with a goblin press gang that might have ended unhappily, with Tristan spending the rest of his life fighting the goblins' endless war beneath the earth, had it not been for Yvain's quick thinking and her sharp tongue. And then it just continues. They
a goblin press gang?
Goblin press gang. I
like
don't know what that means.
Like like goblin paparazzi.
I guess. I don't know.
We heard there was a star around here. Click, 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 click.
Yeah. No, but then it goes through, and Tavern of Folkestone, Coldridge, Colbul Khan, like they're going through a bunch of these different imaginary
and
places.
I think this is a scene that we need a lot more scenes like it in the movie, which is where he sees someone and tackles her into that bush.
Yeah, so like at this point in the novel, this is where you actually start to see them fall in love, because this is their 6-month trek, 10-week trek is what it said.
Yeah.
Between where Shakespeare drops them off and Wall. Like this, I highlighted this sentence. It says, "The star's lips moved involuntary into a smile, and her eyes brightened." And he had been complimenting her.
Yeah.
And that was the first notion of, I think I like this kid.
Yeah.
That we see on page 193.
And it's rough because again, this starts to happen. This is the happy ending of the movie, and we don't get it until we're already an hour and 45 in, hour and a half in.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, this should have been here the whole movie.
Yeah. And following that quote, they talk a little bit, and then he says, "I'm sorry," for her whole situation of, being there, not being with her sisters, the other stars, and singing and stuff. And she says, "Don't be, at least I'm still alive. I was lucky to have fallen in fairy, and I think I was probably lucky to have met you." And "thank you," said Tristan.
Okay. We get some fun scene of Robert De Niro dancing in a dress.
Yeah, Septimus coming in.
Septimus coming in and just,
wrecking the place.
We're using the word whoopsie. His crewmate was like, "We always knew you were a whoopsie."
Yeah.
And it's like, I guess that's nice that his crew still likes him.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where we're going to kick off Act 3, which is all of our characters left where they were and are now all going back.
Yeah. They're all trying to figure out where the other is.
So they go to this tavern. Tristan sees some boobies. Cause she's.
You skipped a whole bunch. Hang on.
Oh no!
How do you get to the tavern? You missed the whole part. Okay, so they leave Shakespeare.
Yeah.
They're wandering for a while. They run down the side of this. This is all in the movie. Run down the side of this bridge because there's a caravan coming, and it's pulled by this crazy-looking woman. And Yvain goes, "Wait, I know her. I saw her with Shakespeare and Frederick, who's that one guy's character."
This is in the movie?
This was in the movie, yeah. She's like that's Ditchwater Sal. She didn't say her name.
Oh, okay.
But we knew who she was. That's when
Yes. I'm there.
Earlier in the movie, we also forgot to mention Michelle Pfeiffer and this character come into contact, and she curses Ditchwater Sal to not be able to see, touch, smell it, perceive it, the star.
And
that's where she
doesn't... meet her. She gives them passage, but turns Tristan into a rat.
She takes the snowdrop first, and then turns him into a mouse.
Correct.
And this in the novel takes them 4 weeks.
Okay.
To get to Wall.
That he's a rat.
He's a mouse, but the entire time, Ditchwater Sal has no idea Yvain's in her caravan. Like, doesn't recognize her, doesn't perceive her, but her bird, Una, does. Yeah. So they get to Wall. She turns him back into a person, and
this is when she like spills all her beans to him, and that she's falling in love with him and all this kind of stuff.
Doesn't happen in the book. She doesn't tell him all that in the book.
Okay.
There's never like a true confession like that until we get closer to the end.
And I would love for, like, show me, don't tell me, you know.
And that's what this book does.
I want to see those scenes happen in which she starts feeling these things, not just like in a montage, you know. I want to see these characters actually like get to know each other and have anything in common at all, or show that they have nothing in common and how they're coming together, you know.
Yeah. So what I would like to do here is Act 3 in the movie is completely different. Okay. So what we will do is we'll summarize Act 3 here, and then I won't interject. I will talk about Act 3 in the book after we're done, because it's completely different.
Well, please interject.
Yeah.
But, so they go to this tavern. I guess they do the nasties right here?
Yeah, with a really, really kind of disturbing interjection of the Ghost Brothers, because Tertius sticks his head out from the roof, and he's telling the other Ghost Brothers on the like pyre to, hey, come check this out, because he's watching them sleep together.
Dude's and getting laid.
They're like,
our nephew's getting laid,
and they don't know who he is. They don't know who he is. So it's really interesting. And the really interesting thing is why they're following Tristan and Yvain, because they're not. I still don't know why the movie did that. Because they didn't follow Tristan and Yvain. I mean, Primus knew who he was, but they were there when Septimus found Primus's body in the bathtub.
Correct.
And in the movie, they should have just followed Septimus, but they didn't. For some reason, they were at Wall before he even got there, which is weird. But no, when they close the door and back out, you know.
It's very old school Hollywood kind of.
Yeah.
So Tristan gets up in the morning, and for whatever reason, like, he runs back to Wall to tell Victoria to put something somewhere.
Yeah.
We get a little bit more Henry Cavill here, which, man, I would like more of him. He's funny.
Henry Cavill here realizes that Tristan is no longer a boy; he's a man, and he's ready to murk him.
Yeah.
And that's not even Tristan's intention. Tristan goes there with the intention of being like, "Hey, Mary Humphrey, I don't like you anymore."
Yeah.
That's pretty much what he does.
And he like cuts her hair off.
He takes a bit of Yvain's hair.
Yeah.
As a token.
Of like, this is the star.
This is the star. Here's your little bit of it. I'm done. I'm not going to bring you the star. And then that's when we see Yvain's like, it's just a lump of stardust.
Yeah.
And we get there's the name of the movie.
Yeah. I did write that. But we get the Leonardo DiCaprio lean forward. It's like, oh, they said the thing. They said the thing. And then the movie finds all of our characters.
All of our characters
All of our characters converge back on this wall.
So Tristan goes across the wall. Yvain comes downstairs, and the innkeeper's like, he told me to tell you that he's found his true love, and all this stuff. Which I think the shopkeep did a
he did a shit job at relaying that message.
Because I'm pretty sure Tristan's intention was, hey, tell her that I'm going back and I'm coming back. Yeah. I'm going over the wall and I'm coming back, but this innkeeper doesn't do that. So
you got it, man.
It breaks Yvain's heart.
Yeah.
And she goes to cross the wall to follow him, and at this point we see Una seeing her.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, don't stop, and Yvain just keeps going.
Yeah.
She's not listening. And so Una follows her.
Yeah.
In the caravan. She locks Ditchwater Sal up and follows.
And then we have, oh god damn it, what's his fucking name? Septimus. These names, Neil Gaiman.
So
he starts converging back on the wall.
Yeah, he's on his way.
We get Lamia, who's coming back.
Yeah. Lamia finds her and Una.
And they all start.
She kills Ditchwater Sal, and she takes Lamia and Una, or she takes Yvain and Una with her.
Yeah, and I love that this wall guardian is just like, fuck it, dude.
Fuck it, I'm done.
I'm over it. I'm sick of all the spooky shit. I'm not about it. They all race back to what I think is a pretty sweet crib that these witches have, man.
Yeah.
And I think we get a pretty cool third act battle.
Yeah.
Where it's Michelle Pfeiffer takes Una and Yvain back to their lair.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna use Una as a new slave for them. They'll cut her heart out and eat it and do all that kind of stuff.
Cut Yvain's heart out.
Yvain, yeah, that's what I meant. We get
and to preface, they're cutting her. I don't think we explained it. They're cutting her heart out so they can become young again.
Correct.
They eat the heart, they become young again. So these witches have been around for a very long time.
Yeah.
So they're all very raggedy looking. And at this point, Michelle Pfeiffer's looking worse for wear.
She's looking rough. And then we get Septimus kind of heading out again, chasing. Mm-hmm. Because it's Tristan takes the horse. The wagon is or is not there. We had a little bit of a disagreement on that. I think there's a little bit of a continuity error here.
I don't think so. Watch the movie, you tell us, because I think that it just shows
Tristan,
shot. It didn't need to show the wagon again.
Tristan pulls the horse from the wagon, and then leaves the wagon where it is, rides the horse to follow where the other carriage was going, and then Septimus comes over, looks at the wall, sees the track, but there should be a caravan there, and there isn't, and I think it's an issue.
You guys tell us. I don't think it's an issue, but
so they're all running. They're all running back to this witch lair. Septimus and Tristan meet outside, and Tristan's like, "Well, you're Septimus. I met Primus, your brother. Primus, yes. Whatever. The Toyota Primus.
Yeah, whatever.
And they break in to try and fight these witches. Some of them are dispatched. I was really hoping that Septimus was going to be a crispy critter right here when he got set on fire.
No. So a fun thing, another thing we need to note is that in the very beginning, the king is asking the three brothers, where's your sister? Where is Una? No one knows where Una is. No one's seen Una in years. And they assume that Septimus killed her. And he's like, why would I kill her when these clot heads are alive?
Yeah.
So when Tristan and Septimus break into the witch lair, they're assuming that there are 4 witches because they see Una.
Yeah.
And so Septimus immediately goes for her and gets her out of the way, and when she turns around and looks at him, there's that moment of recognition.
Yeah.
That they're like, he's like, Una? ?
Yeah.
And then he gets distracted by the other witches and bites it while she goes over to Tristan and she's like, I'm your mom, I'm your mom, I'm your mom.
I'm your hot mom, by the way.
Hot mom,
Wowza.
By the way. She's a good looking lady.
18 years didn't do too much to her.
No, and that's something that's actually mentioned in the book. And I totally forgot to mention her appearance in the book. She has cat ears.
What?
In the book, yeah.
What?
Yeah, so she's fae, right? So all of them are fae in some way. And Una...
Hey, man.
Yeah.
That's more world building than the movie did.
Yeah, exactly. Una has these cat ears, and it's part of Tristan's appearance as well, because he's described to have one weird ear that's flat against his head and kind of pointed, so it's kind of like his mom.
Okay.
And then something else I wanted to note was there is a scene while he and Yvain are walking in the very beginning of the film while they're leading, and she's like, how do you know where you're going? And he's like, I don't know, maybe it's my love for Victoria drawing me there.
Yeah.
And that's something that he and the little hairy man discuss, because the hairy man starts asking him, where's this place, where's that place, where's this person? And he's like, he can answer where these places are, like, right off the bat. He just starts pointing. And he's like, I don't know how I know this information. Mm-hmm. It's because he's part Fae.
Okay.
So, like, that's a big thing
that would be interesting. That would be cool.
In the movie. But no, yeah, Una's appearance is a little different. But I still think she would have rocked it if she had the cat ears in the movie.
Oh, for sure.
Continue. I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay.
I'm your mom. I'm your hot mom.
I'm your hot mom, man. So I think what is really a cool scene, we kind of get the Michelle Pfeiffer versus Septimus.
Yeah, which is very interesting.
She uses this voodoo doll and, like, breaks his arm and breaks his legs and then, like, drowns him by tossing the voodoo doll in, like, a fountain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I was expecting more of him to just start, like, choking. I didn't expect him to, like, start, like, floating and stuff, too.
It acted as if he was in the water. Yeah. And he drowned. So, like, when you see him turn into a ghost and with his brothers, and you have all 7 of the brothers there, and they're like, who the hell is going to be the Lord of Stormhold now? He's drenched. He looks like Primus. He's, soaking wet. And it's like, what? Yeah. You died how?
And then we get kind of the final fight scene between Tristan and Lamia.
Yeah, they dispatch the 2 other witches.
Yep.
They die. Septimus gets one of them, and then Tristan sicks all the animals on the other. Yeah, which is very interesting.
It's like that Fairly Odd Parents joke where it's like, oh no, a sack of weasels.
Yeah,
all
pretty
the
much.
ferrets roll out.
Yeah.
So we get a kind of a cool fight scene where she's using the voodoo doll to fight Tristan, so it's Septimus's dead body.
Yeah.
Like fighting, and again, really, really good physical acting here.
Amazing. I think Mark Strong outdid himself.
He's very, very good.
In that part.
So there's some sword fighting. We get some cool, like, what is essentially Jack Sparrow shit, where he's like chopping down chandeliers and using pulleys and stuff to jump across.
Yeah.
It's a cool little fight scene. There's a little bit of a trickaroo.
Yeah.
From Lamia that's like, oh, you killed my sisters, I don't even want to be young anymore.
Yeah.
And then she was lying about being a double, and
so she essentially quote lets them go, and they're making their way down through this glass hall, and Michael Vaughn said that they mirrored this Matthew Vaughn, I'm so sorry. I was thinking of what's his name.
Yep, you're good.
Matthew Vaughn says that they essentially mirrored this layer after the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles.
Okay.
So it's this long strip of all this glass, and it's, black and onyx and all this stuff, and it looks really, really cool.
It is cool.
And as they're going, Lamia starts cackling, and she's like, ha ha ha, you thought that I was going to let you go, and it's only because a healed heart is tastier than a broken heart from a star. And this is where we get the amazing quote from Miss Danes, where she's like, hold on to me. And he's like, what are you going to do? And she goes, I'm going to do what stars do best. We shine. And then just fucking blasts Michelle Pfeiffer into the atmosphere with this light.
She sparkles Michelle Pfeiffer to death.
Yeah.
And it's a cool, like, kind of, she's now, like, part of the family, and it's a whole family affair, because the mom comes in and hugs them both.
Yeah, the mom comes in and hugs Yvain. She gets to Yvain first, and then Tristan looks down, and the stone that Yvain has been carrying this entire time, that the brothers were looking for, falls off her neck.
Yeah.
And he leans down, and he picks up this quartz that turns into a ruby in his hand. And
all the ghosts are like, holy shit.
And this is where Una,
the last living heir to Stormhold.
Last living male heir. Because that's a very important thing. Yeah. It couldn't have passed to her. Yeah. That's why Septimus said, why would I waste my time killing my sister
For sure.
if my brothers are still alive? So he becomes, Lord of the 82nd Lord of Stormhold.
So we get some final really, really cool Ian McKellen narration.
Love him to death.
Again, the cast in this movie, just everybody they got. It's like when Gandalf is your narrator, you're doing pretty all right for yourself. So Tristan becomes the king of Stormhold.
Yeah.
Stormhold. Stormhold.
D. Yeah.
And they have kids and teach them how to love, and then they die, and it's kind of the Princess and the Frog ending.
They don't die. I don't think you caught that.
They become one with the Force?
No, they use... So, Una gifts both of them a Babylon candle at the coronation.
Yes.
They use the Babylon candle when Tristan is too old, and they become the 2 stars that we see at the end of... Princess and the Frog.
Yeah.
Sorry. At the end of Princess and the Frog, and they are, the second star to the right, straight on till morning stars.
Yeah.
She was the evening star.
Okay.
That's why when they're walking, Tristan's like, I just have to follow, pause, and starts looking around. He's like, I can't find the evening star. And she's like, haha, real funny. Because she's the evening star. So that was a really interesting tidbit that Vaughn took creative liberty for, because that's not what happens in the book.
And that's kind of our movie. So it's
a pretty happy ending.
The third act in the book differs?
Third act of the book differs vastly. I would like to take us back to that's way back. To Tristan and Yvain getting with...
Shit, we're talking about Dunstan again?
No. Tristan and Yvain getting to Ditchwater Sal, right? So she turns him into a mouse. And they're on this journey to Wall, right? And this is where Michelle Pfeiffer's character diverges, okay? So we know that Ditchwater Sal has our 2 main characters with her. And then we go to a whole chapter that's dedicated to Michelle Pfeiffer, okay? She goes to this place called Diggory Dyke. Diggory Dyke is a span between 2 of the mountain passes that you have to cross through to get over to the road that leads to Wall. So our 2 characters will have to go through Diggory Dyke to get there. So she goes to Diggory Dyke and she constructs this little ramshackle cottage for herself. And she starts preparing for when she comes across Yvain. And Septimus has been watching this woman. He has been following Michelle Pfeiffer since the death of Primus. He gave up his search for the stone to avenge Primus.
What the fuck?
Now, this is where the world building is different, because... Hang on, I gotta find the...
I feel like if they would have did that in the movie, it would have been... Like, because they hate each other.
Yeah, so it's not a... Here it is. Bear with me.
You're alright, man.
He said, I would have killed... this is, Septimus. I would have killed you myself. I had a fine plan for your death. When I discovered you were no longer on the heart of the dream, it took me long enough to steal the ship's boat. And that's what I was talking about earlier when Primus confuddled him.
Yeah.
Where was it? So he thinks that he's now the Lord of Stormhold because his brother's dead. And then, because we see that in the movie as well. He's like, oh, I'm the Lord. And then he's like, well, I still need the damn stone. So he needs the stone. But
he gives up on it.
He gives up on it because there's the matter of revenge. You must take revenge upon my brother's killer before anything else. Now it's blood law. Okay. So it is part of their
if someone
tradition.
Else kills
if someone
them,
else
they
kills
have
them,
to
they
go.
have to avenge them because it should have been them themselves. Would have been a cooler movie.
Would have been cool, Matthew Vaughn.
So Septimus is following Michelle Pfeiffer, finds her, he watches her for 2 days. He's like, I don't know how the hell I'm gonna kill this bitch. She doesn't eat, so he can't feed her those berries that he killed the other one with.
Yep.
And, he does... We left that out, too. Tertius dies in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
We talk about how they were quickly dispatched.
No, but, he is watching her, and he comes to the conclusion he's gonna set the house on fire. He's like, that's gonna be the easiest way. So he thinks she's in there. She had created a double of herself, so she was not.
She was lying about being a double.
So he sets the house on fire, and he's standing out, and he's waiting at the door with a sword. He's like, all right, any minute now she's going to come out.
Somebody gonna get hurt really bad.
Yeah, exactly. And he feels this, like a punch to his ankle.
Okay.
And he looks down, and he's bit by a snake. on the back of the boot. And he's like, the leather of the boot got it. I didn't even feel it. And then his legs start to go. And he's like, oh no. And he turns around as he's like beginning to be paralyzed, and he falls to the ground, and she's standing there. And she's like, dog, you thought you were going to kill me with fire? No, not at all.
Speaking of Severus Snape, by the way.
Yeah.
Getting killed by a snake.
Murked by a snake, yeah. No, so he, essentially what the snake did was it paralyzed him, and then it began to shut down his organs. So it was a very, quote, peaceful death, because he ends up looking completely normal when he's a ghost, right? And he, as a ghost, he looks at the house, and the house is fine. Was never on fire. Looked completely fine. And he was like, what the hell? And so she's waiting in Diggory Dyke, and Ditchwater Sal comes rolling through with her cargo in tow, and Ditchwater Sal, not knowing she has the star with her, is questioned by Michelle Pfeiffer, essentially, I'll just call her, is questioned by her, and is like, hey, who at this point is so old she can't stand upright.
Okay.
Like, by herself. Like, she has wasted all of the youth she had.
She's looking rough.
She's looking real rough. Essentially how she looks at the end of the movie is what she's looking at now.
Which, again, back to the physical acting, I'll be a broken record here. Her walking in and, like, opening the doors is so funny.
So when questioned by Michelle Pfeiffer, she's like, no, I have my bird who was a person and this mouse boy I found who was a person. And she's like, you have no one else. And Ditchwater Sal's like, nah, no one else. I know of.
Know, yeah.
And Yvain's hidden inside the caravan. So they keep on going.
Okay.
And they make it to Wall. And she, Ditchwater Sal turns him back into a person. And they head out into the meadow. The guards at the Wall refuse to let Tristan over. Refuse to let him cross back into the Wall, so they have to stay another night where all the market sets up. And so they're sleeping in the whatever. Tristan's mom comes over with her chain and everything, walks over to them, has a whole conversation with Yvain, and essentially low-key tells Yvain who she is.
Okay.
Because she can't express who she is, actually, while she's still a slave. So they spend the night. Tristan wakes up. He goes over the Wall. Because
does basically the same thing that we see in the movie.
Essentially. So he is told that someone at the Wall, a young woman, is waiting for him, has asked his presence. So he goes over. It's his sister Louisa. She takes him to the 7th Magpie, which is Mr. Bermios's, I think that's how you pronounce it, the bar, essentially.
Okay.
Where his dad is. He talks to his dad. He then goes and meets with Victoria.
Okay.
And at this point, still doesn't know about his mom, right? Still has no idea.
Yep.
His dad takes him to Victoria, and he and Victoria sit down and have a conversation. And he's like, look, I found the star. But I don't know what I want to do. And she's like, well, I'm in love. I can't marry you. And I was telling you, no, don't kiss me in the beginning. Because my heart belonged to another. And he had already proposed to me. And he was like, oh, well, who is he? And he's like, well, she's like, Mr. Monday.
Okay.
So she is going to marry Mr. Monday. And he's like, do it in this week, if you must. And she's like, well, you requested, when I sent you off for the star, I was to do whatever you wanted, whatever you desired. And he's like, I only have one desire. And immediately she gets scared, right? And she's like, oh no, well, what was that? And he's like, I want you to marry Mr. Monday as quick as you can. If you love him, I want you to, do that. And she's like, shit, okay, I'll do it. So he leaves with his dad, and they go back to his house. And she and Mr. Monday go to the market, where they meet Yvain, because she didn't cross the Wall. Una told her, do not cross the Wall.
So they meet in the market in Stormhold.
In Stormhold, yeah, in Ferry.
Okay.
So, because it is the 1st of May,
yeah,
they can cross the Wall.
Yeah.
So on the walk back to his home, Dunstan and the dad discuss who his father is, or discuss who his mother is, all this stuff. They go back over. Victoria finds Yvain, doesn't know who she is. They have a conversation because Victoria's like, oh, you look really sad. She's like, I'm waiting on someone. I don't know if he's going to come back. Introduces herself as Victoria. She's like, oh, you're Victoria, because he's been like talking about her the entire time. She's like, yeah, and I'm getting married. And she's like, oh, you're getting married. Okay. And Victoria introduces Robert, Mr. Monday, and is like, this is who I'm marrying, all this stuff. And Yvain immediately calms down. She's like, oh, this is okay. So now knowing who his mother is, he comes back over into Fairy, meets up with Yvain in the market, finds his mother, who is now free of her captor. The chain is no longer existent. It went translucent and disappeared because 2 Mondays came together in 1 week with a Sunday. And she tells him who she is and all this stuff, and he takes the stone from Yvain, who's been carrying it the entire time, and immediately, now he knows what it is, and he starts wearing it around his neck and stuff. Yvain walks off while he and his mom argue. She finds this little old lady. This little old lady is eyeing her, and she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's Michelle Pfeiffer.
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer lived. Yvain held no ill will towards her, because she is now just this little decrepit creature who can't do anything, whether she'd like it or not, and she essentially tucks tail and goes back to her sisters, who are only ever mentioned 2 other times in the book. Okay. By the way, there's no check-in with her. And then the Una returns to Stormhold and becomes regent. It takes Yvain and Tristan 3 years. They come back to Stormhold. They see Una's doing really well, so they dip again. And they traverse, they do all their travels. They come back 5 years later. And he then was ready to become Lord of Stormhold. He's the 82nd Lord of Stormhold for another 200 years. Yeah. He also, because he can live very long.
Yeah. Which they say 80 in the movie.
They say 80 in the movie, but it's like another 230 years. They have no children. They are not able to have children because he is a half-breed and she is a star. They can't have kids.
She is a cosmic ball of fire.
She is a cosmic ball of fire. They are married by the time they come back. They become Lord and Lady of Stormhold. Una dies at some point, and then Tristan, after, this long reign, dies.
Okay.
And they send him down to the Hall of Ancestors. That's mentioned at the beginning of the movie, or the beginning of the book. And Lady Yvain rules for the foreseeable future. She never steps down, and she does the book states she does almost a better job than Tristan.
Yeah.
And it's a short epilogue. And let's see. And the last thing, the very last paragraph says, they say each night when duty of state permits, she climbs on foot and limps alone to the highest peak of the palace, where she stands for hour after hour, seeming not to notice the cold week winds. She says nothing at all, but simply stares upward into the dark sky and watches with sad eyes the slow dance of infinite stars. So she never got to go home, which is really, really sad. And for now, she is the Lady of Stormhold.
Okay.
Neil Gaiman wrote a little postscript for this, and he immediately says, Stardust was the sequel to a novel I haven't written, and I am not sure I'll ever write. Maybe one day. So Stardust is the sequel to a novel entitled Wall, that we get the prologue for in the Stardust novel. It is 4 pages of a character that is actually in his American Gods novel. So all of this takes place in the same universe.
Okay. The Neil Gaiman extended universe.
The Neil Gaiman extended universe.
Oh, dude, don't tell anybody that. We'll get 17 more movies.
Yeah, no, if you have read American Gods, there is a character by the name of Jenny Curtin, who is a author. And she would be the main character of the book entitled Wall.
Okay.
So a lot of divergent. The third act is entirely different.
Okay.
Except for maybe a couple of scenes. Yeah. The ending is something completely different.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I'm glad the third act was what it was. and not because
Not the book.
we got witches.
You'd have a lot of disappointed people.
We got people fighting witches with swords instead of just being like, "Ha, you're old now."
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But that's Stardust.
I mean, yeah. Closing thoughts. I will say, the book was better.
Ha! You said the thing.
I said the thing. And I say this because I did read the book. There is so much more world building and so many more questions we could be asking about this story that we don't get to ask in the movie. There's a lot of stuff that's like, the movie does the thing of, well, here's your main shit, run with it.
Yeah.
When there's so much other stuff that we could be discussing and doing in with the book, at least. And that's not to say that the movie's not good. I love the movie.
Yeah.
Like I said in the beginning, this movie is a childhood favorite of mine. I have loved this movie since I was 7 years old. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, when we met Charlie Cox last year. When we met him, I went to Walgreens and printed a picture of Tristan instead of Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because Tristan Thorne will always have my heart. So.
Yeah. From a movie perspective, it's certainly not a bad movie. I think it's a movie that there's certainly good bones to it, and that's probably because it's coming from a good novel.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot to work with. It's missing a lot, I think, that'll push it over the edge to make it something that's like really, really, really hyper enjoyable. Because you don't really get an understanding of what the world is or why the world is. And I understand that we're taking a 300 something page book.
257 is my copy.
Yeah, and it's a 2-hour movie, a little over 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I definitely think if we simplify a little bit, I think it would be a better movie if we were a little bit more focused, and we didn't sacrifice, plot for jokes.
Agreed. Yeah, I feel like this movie was trying to be funnier than it should have been.
And the movie is funny. I was laughing pretty consistently. There were times I was laughing with the movie. There were times I was laughing at the movie. It was a movie that was made in 2007, so not all of the CG holds up. Correct. I think some of it looks pretty rough.
Yeah, like when she tells Ditchwater Sal who she is.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah, that scene is very interesting.
It's pretty rough. I think
scenery looked good though. I think that they filmed in
the sets
really
look good. The practical makeup looks great. Like all the witch makeup looks awesome.
Costume design's really good.
The costume design is fantastic. I think there's a lot of really, really cool shots.
Yeah.
There's some good cinematography. You said they filmed in Scotland and Iceland.
And Northern England. Yeah.
So it looks beautiful.
Production.
It looks really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
The score I think is great.
Yeah, they did really, really
the music
good.
is really, really good. The cast is great, like we said multiple times. I don't think there's really too much of a weak link.
No.
But again, it's the pacing that it is really, really off, and it gets really, really sleepy in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, during that second act.
And you kind of forget where the movie is. So, if we're hitting our numbers scale, I like stars. I'm gonna go stars. Okay. I'm gonna go 3.5.
Huh.
I'm gonna go 3.5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
For let's go a 7 out of 10.
Okay. It's really hard for me to separate my youth from this movie.
For sure.
So I'm gonna go higher. I'm gonna do an 8.5 out of 10. If I was allowed to, I'd give it a 10 out of 10.
You're allowed to give
it. But
baby, this is your show. You can do whatever you want.
Like, I mean, I feel like giving it a 10 out of 10 will disappoint some people. When and if they go and watch it, because it's mostly nostalgia for me.
For sure.
For giving it a 10 out of 10. Now, the novel, on the other hand, if you like high fantasy and just a lot of fun, and you have questions about lore and stuff.
I would have loved some fucking goblins, man.
Yeah, I give the novel a 10 out of 10. It's definitely worth the read. Again, it's a really short read. It's a really easy read because it's being narrated to you.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's difficult to understand. There are a couple of names. Of course, the prince's names and stuff are a little hard to get right. But
all the names are silly.
They're being named for, Una is the female version of one.
Yeah.
Essentially, and then all of her brothers are their number in order of birth.
Yeah.
So it's kind of silly. And Tristran,
Yeah.
Tristran, however you want to... I don't know how Neil pronounces it in his audiobook. And Yvain and, all this stuff.
You know what,
but,
Neil Gaiman, if you're listening, reach out. How do we say this fucking
how
character?
do I say his name? I get writing it with an R, but the pronunciation, and then trying to pronounce it with a frickin' English accent like you're supposed to, I'm like, I don't know how that would work. There are too many consonants.
Yeah, we all know that British people can't say the letter R.
And they can't speak it when they speak through their teeth. No, but, yeah, 10 out of 10 for the novel, 8.5 out of 10 for the movie for me. I do suggest reading the book and then watching the movie, because again, it's a short read, but if you want just like a fun little movie to watch, you can watch it, and it's a movie that you can watch with children as well.
For sure.
I don't think it's intended for kids, because the book is not intended for children.
I think the movie is pretty kid-friendly.
Yeah, that's probably why I watched it at such a young age.
Yeah.
And why my mom just turned it on. But, no, it's wonderful, and it is something that can and should probably stick with you. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
And what closing thoughts to have.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening so very much. If you like what you're hearing and you wanna hear some more, you can follow us on this page, or our Instagram is at Book Was Better Pod.
Yep.
Please comment on stuff, give us requests. You can email us episode requests at bookwasbetterpod@gmail.com. We have some Out of the Theater reviews coming up here. We just posted 2 yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday being February the 17th, 2024.
Yeah.
And we'll have some other stuff coming out of the poop shoot here pretty soon. So, follow us on our social medias. Again, at Book Was Better Pod on Instagram. I'm at WolfmanBE Pro on Instagram.
I'm at Nikki's So Done on Instagram. That's 2 S's, not 1.
And I think you can follow us on Letterboxd as well, at WolfmanBE Pro on Letterboxd.
And at NikkiBrew11 on Letterboxd, and that's brew with a B, not D.
Yeah, brew, BREW. And then last thing to kind of plug is our YouTube, which we got some stuff coming out on there.
Yeah.
Hopefully some live streams. We'll fucking see, man.
We'll try it out again.
So, Book Was Better Podcast on YouTube. So follow us on there for updates. We don't know what the next episode is yet.
Yeah, we will be announcing that on probably an Out of the Theater review here soon.
Yeah, so follow us and all that kind of stuff. We're putting the book back on the shelf. So until next time, my name's Bren.
And my name's Nikki.
And this was the Book Was Better podcast. Woo!